Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to a new video. Before we get into this, subscribe immediately. You're gonna not want to miss part two of this video, which will go over the slightly more competitive New Jersey gubernatorial race. You know that's gonna be a big one. Subscribe so you don't miss that. But Virginia has a gubernatorial race this year, and a lot of people have ignored it. You look at polling for it, you see that Abigail Spanberger is out to an early lead, and a lot of polls like Roanoke College, which is not a real pollster, um, have been hyped up, showing Winsome Sears down over Abigail Spanberger. Other than that, though, we've seen virtually every other poll um, with Democrats up, even Republican internals like Single have had yeah, Sears position for strong showing. It's not a strong showing single, but even other pollsters have shown Abigail Spanberger as the early favorite. And that has led to a lot of Republicans losing hope um in Virginia and just abandoning the race. And by abandoning, I mean you're not going to be tweeting about it at 3 a.m. constantly, but I still think there's some stuff to be talked about in Virginia. I definitely think that there's a chance it's a, competitive race. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw, Earl Sears have a bit of an overperformance, compared to expectations, and this is why. So, 2017, a lot of people are basing their predictions off of this race where Ralph Northam, the incumbent lieutenant governor, was able to win by about 9 over Ed Gillespie, who was, I think, the nominee for Senate in 2014. Um, it looks bad. Looks like, oh my god, Trump destroyed the Virginia GOP. How could he? But you also see that these down ballot races were a bit better. We'll get back to the down ballot races at the end of the video. Hang tight. But I don't think that I don't think you're going to see a repeat of this because first of all, you had an incumbent Democrat governor, um, Terry McAuliffe, who was relatively popular. We head back. Actually, I think at this time, I think by now he wasn't governor anymore. No, he was in 2017. What? Oh, Terry McAuliffe. I was thinking before him with Tim Kaine. Um, Yeah. Terry McAuliffe was able to win in 2013 and a little bit of an upset compared to like what you would think because of Robert Sarvis. Vote Libertarian, you get Democrat. Remember, don't vote Libertarian, kids. But he was relatively popular as governor. And even though you did see Ralph Northam didn't have the best primary performance, Ed Gillespie had a much more brutal primary against Corey Stewart. I think got involved later in his career in the American far right politician. Wow, but I'm pretty sure he got involved later in the Virginia GOP in his career. But you did see that, especially the fact that it was a localized race, and there wasn't really a Republican administration um, to tie Republicans to, besides for the Trump administration. You did see, I will admit, Northam did overperform polls, but even earlier on, the lieutenant governor was underestimated in polling. But eventually, as the general election approached, you did see Northam took a pretty strong lead, and he ended up outperforming that at the very end to a pretty healthy margin of victory. Um, and if we head to 2021, you saw Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin, people have this idea that Glenn Youngkin just won because of the bathrooms. He was that great. Like, he was an opportunist on that. And I say opportunist from the bottom of my heart. I love Glenn Youngkin because he actually won, unlike many. But a lot of that was not set in stone, but it was influenced before that. Once again, he's trailing in the polls. Behind the candidate was more name recognition, a former governor. If you want an aggregate here, and he eventually begins to catch up at the end of the campaign. But like, he's already polling only 5 points behind early on, which is pretty good since Glenn Youngkin before this was a former CEO of the Carlyle Group. Like, that's an irrelevant position. He was plucked out of obscurity. Like, if Republicans wanted to run someone relevant, they could have ran Amanda Chase. No, I'm kidding. But you saw his name recognition wasn't very high. Especially very early polling, he was getting crushed. And notice also, he was getting crushed in all Republican polls. So this idea that Republican polls will only underestimate the Democrat is bullshit. Polls sponsored by Youngkin's campaign had him down by 6. Recent WPI poll shows major tightening in Virginia governor's race as Joe Biden drags down support for McAuliffe. Like, you can't see these. These don't happen. I mean, Virginia governor's race is real. You can't trust the internal polls this far out. Which is another thing. Like, you look at these polls. Let's just delete Roanoke College from our memories. Because Roanoke College is not a real pollster. This is the same pollster that had Harris up by 20 in Virginia. Weird. They have that again. But they're not a real pollster, so let's just delete that from our memories. What do we see? We see one coefficient poll, or not even a Republican internal, sponsored by a Republican group that shows Sears down by 3. We see another pollster, Harris X Pantheon Insight. Harris X is a little bit not completely Republican biased, but I'd say maybe a little bit Republican favorable. And we see Winsome Earl Sears down by 4, down by 3. You see Single, not sponsored by Sears' campaign or Republicans. She's down 6. Then you see another not real poll, and then you see Coefficient's last poll with it tied. Supposedly, the idea is after this coefficient poll, Winsome Sears became so unelectable. Oh my God, she toured the state saying to put black people in. I can't say that on YouTube, but she made one comment about gay marriage, like her being against it. And you read on Twitter, you'd think that she's the next Mark Robinson. Um, she's not. So is this a good look for her? No, but the main thing is that this Roanoke College poll was spread around. Even the pollster itself said, "Oh my God, look, tee hee hee, look, there's more undecideds than Winsome Earl Sears," which is a complete failure of being a pollster. You look at the other polls: 9%, 14%, 15%, 17%, 12%. The Roanoke College, 28% undecided. Like, be fucking for real. 28% is not making up their minds. Like, a month before the primary. Like, this was already decided. Like, there's no chance that you get a result like this, um, and then you keep it. Unless you're polling like people who live under a rock, 28% is not gonna have an opinion. Like, this number is way too high for undecided. And another thing that I pointed this out early. You look at these early polls. Winsome Sears is not trailing because she's minus 20 with independents or anything. She's trailing because she's losing Republican support. The fact is, Winsome Earl Sears' baseline is already higher than Trump's 2024 baseline, where he lost the state by 6. Because instead of running on the Trump brand, she's running on a popular Republican administration. These gubernatorial elections, on-off years, focus on local state politics. Something like 2017. Did those local state politics take a little bit of a backseat to national trends? Not completely. Um, I'm not saying that, like, it was entirely um national politics, but those local politics, rather than in 2025's case helping Republicans significantly, could has a plus 20 approval. Instead, they helped Democrats, and it allowed Democrats to paint their Republican opponents as allies of Trump. Um, that was not good. That was a significant um, obstacle in Republicans' chances of winning this gubernatorial race in the first place. And once again, the early polling did not show that. Another thing, Winsome Sears' name recognition isn't that high. Um, Spanberger's name recognition is around the same, but like a lot of people think, "Oh my God, Winsome Sears, her name recognition is 100%. No one knows who Spanberger is." Like, you look at these polls. Another explanation for why Republicans haven't made a choice and why a lot of these undecideds are just partisan Republicans is that Winsome Sears isn't that well known. She's a statewide elected official, but she was elected statewide on the same ballot as Youngkin. Like, you go to the 2021 Virginia election results, Lieutenant Governor was so out of people's minds, and same thing with the Attorney General, that like they weren't even shown. They don't even show the county maps here on New York Times because everything was focused on this gubernatorial race. These down ballot races, it was like you voted Republican in the governor race, you voted Republican down ballot. You voted Democrat in the gubernatorial race, you voted Democrat down ballot. That was it. Um, People really didn't pay much attention to the lieutenant governor or attorney general races because like they weren't what was important. This race was seen as a national bellwether. Um, because like for the last year, we had had no important elections, and people like you see the exact same thing with Wisconsin Supreme Court. People just were bored. Like people wanted something to tie every ounce of attention that they had to. All these news broadcasters wanted some race to hold up a poll and say this is an indictment on the Biden administration or this is a vindication of the Biden administration or something like that. They wanted some race to tie that to. And Virginia was that race because this race was some extent because of Biden, but mostly it was because the incumbent Democratic administration in Virginia was incredibly unpopular. Terry McAuliffe ran a horrible campaign. Glenn Youngkin ran a great campaign. Like, had you undone all of that, had you had the Northam administration have a plus 20 approval rating, Youngkin ran a terrible campaign. McAuliffe ran a wonderful campaign. Would have seen a plus 5 Democrat race. That's why people want to say Virginia gubernatorial is over. Sears is done. Spanberger's going to win by 20 points, but you can't say that as of now. Is she favored to lose? Yes. Is she favored to lose overwhelmingly yet? No. Because I think you're building off of these 2020 trends. 2020, I think, was just a revolt away from Trump in suburbia. Kind of saw a little bit of a pushback in 2021, but Winsome Sears will be building off of these trends in Nova. Yes, she'll suffer a bit in the Richmond metropolitan area, but I think you'll see she'll lose in the rural areas, but I do think you'll see Nova she'll do much better in this Hampton Roads area, as I call it. I think she'll do better in because I think there's a lot of people here who voted for Kamala Harris or would vote for Kamala Harris had they turned out, who would vote for Winsome Sears in a local election, or at least vote to support Glenn Youngkin. Um, and I think you won't see it be like a +2 Democrat win. It's not going to be that close, but I think at the end of the day, if I had to make a determination, you'd probably see a +4 to 5 Democrat win out of Virginia. So narrowly a little bit less than Kamala Harris's win because you do have acting for Republicans. The local statewide administration is relatively popular, but acting against them, Sears isn't the best candidate. You're probably not going to get as good turnout as 2021. Another reason why Republicans won. Um, Actually, I can show it here. You look at total turnout; it's like 2.6, 2.7 million. You look here, 3.3 million. I don't think you're getting 3.3 million again. I think if you're lucky as a Republican, you might get like 3.2 million. But or maybe 3.1 5 might be the ceiling, but you're not getting 3.3 million again. You need more than that because you need higher and higher turnout. Um, you know, the less circumstance comes into play. And this was a lot circumstance, but a circumstance that was utilized well to give Youngkin the win. I don't think you have the same type of luck, same kind of like plot armor that Youngkin had in 2021. Though I do think that on election night is going to go under the radar. I think this race will be closer than people think. Um, but still, at the end of the day, I do think that New Jersey will be the key race of 2025. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. But, anyways, if you enjoyed this video, it's a little bit more schizophrenic. It's like almost a clip from my gubernatorial predictions. I try to give like the same level of thought, maybe even a little bit longer, because we do have a lot more on the Virginia gubernatorial race. than we have on something like Michigan or New York or Georgia. Like we have no polls for that. Um, not even gonna try to pretend that like I have any idea. Um, like any concrete visualization of those races compared to something like Virginia or New Jersey, where we actually have polling, and more Virginia because you go to New Jersey, you see these polls. Um, like these polls are retarded. You see Rutgers Eagleton, also not a real pollster. Like this, the same pollster that was up by 20 in New Jersey. People still believe these polls. Like it boggles my mind. People are insane. It makes no sense. Yeah, but and another thing you can tell it's done biased because there's this massive amount of undecideds. Um, but yeah, don't trust the media frenzy. She's not gonna win. Winsome Sears isn't gonna do horrific. But Abigail Spanberger, by all likelihood, is going to win the Virginia gubernatorial election, probably by about 4 to 5%. But anyways, thank you for watching. Um, Subscribe if you're new. We're rushing towards 2.5 thousand subscribers. Um, where I will play Crusader Kings 3 live on stream. Oh god. Join the Discord server down below. Um, so you can interact with the community, all the based people. But yeah. Thank you for watching. Godspeed. Tester's done. Out.